So in this last session, I would like to talk about John Nicholas Grew, S.J., Jesuit. By the way, Jesuit actually is a rhetorical, I can't even pronounce it, but it's a curse word, and eventually it became our name. But early on, they were, you Jesuits, you Jesus, and it became, and that's what we're known by. So we're known by a curse word. So we're cursed. So John Nicholas Grew lived 1731 to 1803. He became 72. It's a pretty good age during those times. And he lived through the French Revolution and kind of semi-hiding. He was known under an alias of Leclerc. And again, a little bit French Revolution. If things go bad in society, that's why right now, I think too, history always repeats itself. And right now with this COVID virus, the economical fallout, I'm convinced, will be much bigger. This is just the beginning. There's a real pressure that the middle class is kind of losing it, that there's a real move already for years to lower wages. Amazon, by the way, is very good at it, or Walmart. And that a few who are super rich, they become, well, continue to be making billions. And so when there's that equality, and especially when people go hungry, so it's a time also of failed harvest in Europe, and the European wars, which spilled out over to the colonies and US and all of that. So when there's unrest, when people are not happy, who are the first to gonna pay the price? So in that time too, the upper class, they, few people had a lot of money, and they caused the target. That's why the king got killed. Also, many of the Catholic clergy, they were very wealthy, and they were also a target. But the thing is, when they become a target, all the priests become a target. And also before that, there was a time with the Huguenots and a lot of disturbances. Also, the Jesuits, they were suppressed actually in 1764 in France. And after, see, we're Jesuits. We do have rule books, but human beings are human beings. And the Jesuits in Martinique, they did some creative financing of their ministry, which went sour. And so there was a backlash. But worldwide, we were suppressed in 1773. And again, there's a lot of politics involved. If you have people who, Jesuits, I came through the back, through the kitchen door, but Jesuits usually are known to have a lot of education and a lot of influence. You want to get rid of those people, especially when they stand in the way of making a lot of money. And so we were suppressed, and we came out of suppression in 1814. And the only Jesuits actually left who still could flourish was in White Russia. So the last Jesuits in Canada died in, I believe, year 1800, because we were, in Canada, we were suppressed, but not suppressed that we could not do ministry, but we were not allowed to take in new vocations, new novices. So that died out. And there's, of course, a whole story there. But that's the kind of the time he found himself in. And John Nicholas Grew Actually, he was an academic. He specialized in Greek philosophy. So what does an academic do who cannot anymore teach? So he got kind of, he met a sister, a visitation sister, a Salesian sister actually, in Paris, who introduced him to quiet prayer, to contemplative prayer, to go beyond his philosophy, because it's so easy to get stuck in philosophy. Philosophy is good, by the way, but it is again going beyond what that can teach. And so he also didn't want to sign the French Constitution. So the French Constitution basically took the power away from the Pope. The Pope, the government is in charge of you, and you become a government employee. And obviously, as we know, many got killed. The guillotine was very effective. And so he finds himself in that environment, and he's moving around, initially Lorraine, more or less to the German border, which was free. He was a little bit in the Netherlands. At one time, he was invited to England, and a little bit safer there. And his most known work is the Spiritual Maximus, which I will be talking about. But he wrote all kinds of works, even The Science of the Crucifix. Now there's an academic for you, unpacking it all that way. One of the things he did have to deal with, because he really loved his silence, and was to be accused of quietism. And I spoke a little bit about that in the first session. And today the equivalent is kind of the mindfulness, to slow down the mind and totally silence, just quiet. And it's not all bad. And especially in our culture, we are just inundated with information, and so much noise. And it can carry so easily through in our daily lives. This morning, as I first started, just a reminder that it's still a silent retreat. It can be so much within us, and nobody means bad, but it can be so much in us that the mind has to keep going, okay? But again, he was cleared of it, but silent prayer is to still be with God. To even have a little mantra going. Just even a little mantra, or just the thought of God, or being focused on one particular thing. So as I started the retreat, I said, if you wish, take 15 minutes looking at a tree. Look how God created so intrinsically that tree with its own ecosystem. And if you go too small, if you would put a microscope on it, it would be just amazing. To be in awe of creation would be one thing. The Blessed Sacrament is, again, it can be very contemplative. Very contemplative. I'm with God, I'm in the silence. I might look at my own life, or I might be praying for somebody very gently. Lord, may my son come back to church. Lord, my daughter has abandoned me. Lord, may only good come from it. But very quiet. It's a different kind of prayer. So I'm just going to go through a few quotes. John Grew, actually a monk who translated his work, anonymous, he said about him, John Grew despised formal meditation by any means, but regarded it always as a stepping stone towards a higher form of prayer, the intimate prayer of the Spirit. He probably was a high introvert to start off with, and so I could see how the public prayer, it's very important, but I could see how he just, by his personality, would want to slip into that quietism, or into that quiet prayer. And actually, my experience usually is that those in academia, not always, but mostly, are introverts, high introverts. And so they like the silence. We just got some people at the infirmary, they say, these Jesuits are always in the room. Most of I'm an exception, I'm an extrovert, but I like my silence. We like our silence. We like to be in a room with God. And it's sometimes for other people hard to get used to. They're thinking about, doing games and so on. And most guys say, not really, thank you. All Christian sanctity is contained in two things: the knowledge of God and the knowledge of self. The knowledge of God elevates the soul, and it does. The knowledge of self keeps it humble. So simple, and how so profound. Each one of us knows that we are not perfect. I don't have to look far into my life. We know we're imperfect. We each have done things in our lives we're not proud of. Some of us might be struggling with an addiction. We all know that we're imperfect. And the more we know that, the more we are in touch with that imperfection, the more we will be non-judgmental of other people. Never judge anyone until you walk a mile in their shoes. Sorry, your metric, a kilometer. But it is so true. Yes, we're spiritual beings. We want to be raised up to God. But we're also broken beings. The pleasures of this world do not tempt him, one growing in the spiritual life, nor its dangers impel him, neither do its terrors alarm him. His body is on earth, but his soul, in thought and desire, is already in heaven. We become strangers where we are. Yes, we have to walk our earthly journey, but we become strangers in our own land. We have different values. Just like when I started, and I used the example of this lady in Melbourne, Australia. If you met her on the street, you would say, well, average woman walking down the street. Looks the same. She goes to the supermarket the same as anyone else. But her soul is already in heaven. She does her thing. I remember in my own life, as many of you know, I had a small little business for 25 years. I remember at one point, actually November 2003, I'm sitting, having my meal, and I said, that's strange. The business means nothing to me anymore. I made more money than ever. Means nothing anymore. My house, my investments, yeah. I have 3 adult children, so they were in university and so on, studying. I better work, they have to get through school. But really, I don't care about anything anymore. I should be depressed, but I'm not. That is God. That is God. So we have to do our thing in life. We each have our responsibilities. And so we cannot run away from life. But our values change. Our values change. A car just becomes a car. And a computer is just a computer. Our values change. And it's really interesting how that works gradually as we grow in the spiritual life. Actually, person I won't mention by name, but he works here. The guy has plenty of money. He's very generous also with his money. But we had Father Bert Folio just was mission to the Martyrs Shrine, and he was living here. And so we had a surplus car, an old Nissan, 300,000 kilometers on it. And he says, oh, I can have that car. Why would I want to buy a new car? Looks like it runs good. Who cares? He could easily go out, pay cash for a car. But it doesn't matter, it's just transportation. An example how someone grew in the spiritual life. It's not that he's going to run away and throw all his money in the wind. But he says it's just not important anymore. When the soul is in the passive state, the lips speak and the hand writes of divine things without premeditation. God himself provides all that is necessary, and the very memory of it passes away. Have you ever noticed that, I'm sure everyone can think of an example, that you were with someone who was struggling, and that you had the right words, just out of nowhere. I'm sure you can think of a moment like that. Or that you could be with someone who was really struggling, and just your presence. That is God. God works the more we slow down, the more we center ourselves in God. Somehow God will give us the words. Really interesting. The Spirit takes over. Yes, we still have to do our daily thing, but somehow things change. Somehow things change. And somehow we know that things will work out. Yes, we have the coronavirus. Yes, there's a lot of panic. But well, somehow it will work out. God soon leads strong and generous souls beyond the sweetness, in order that they may give them what is more substantial. It's very well known in the spiritual life, early on in the conversion, there can be a lot of sweetness. Incredible, I can't describe it, but a sweetness, you know it is God. But then God slowly starts to remove that feeling. I often explain it this way. God does not want little babies all their life. Mommy, 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 where are you? So I often use the image actually of a mother and a baby. And it's a beautiful image of a baby at the mother's breast. A baby the mother caressing the baby. Beautiful sign of security. But then this cannot go on for the rest of life. There is a time that the baby, Johnny, has to learn that when he does not see mommy, that mommy is still there. So I often use the image of Johnny, mommy goes to the bathroom, and Johnny, 2-year-old Johnny, banging on the bathroom door and saying, "Mommy, mommy, mommy, where are you?" And mommy says, "Hey, I'm just going to the bathroom. Can you leave me alone for a few minutes?" But this is also in the spiritual life. God will slowly often withdraw that sweetness. God wants mature children. When we are deeply touched by the Spirit of God, and He calls it sweetness, it is food for the journey. And here I will again go back to Mother Teresa, because she's so well documented. When she had her real call within a call, there was a lot of sweetness around it too in the months following. A lot of encouragement. But as the Sisters of Mercy were founded, slowly it all disappeared. And the more she longed for that sweetness, for her lover, the more it seemed all black and distant. Welcome to the spiritual life. And again, the entrance to the spiritual life is often stoned by God with flowers. He fills the soul with sweetness and consolation in order to detach it from all that it is not himself, and to facilitate the exercises of an interior life, which otherwise would prove too difficult. Just like little children, hopefully there's a bonding with the parents, and there's a lot of sweetness, and they really feel the protection. But it's again also meant as food for the journey that they become responsible adults. Not everyone has that, I'm highly aware of it, but that's hopefully the journey, that we grow up. Even when God sees that we are determined to have nothing to do with Him, He does not withdraw altogether. And often we can see that, or I really am privileged to experience it in those who are struggling with an addiction. And they somehow, even when they're deep in, there is something drawing them. It can be very dramatic, but something is drawing them, and they try again. But God never gives up. God never gives up. Last year, I was privileged to be with a person, and he was shooting up here at Pineview School. And things went wrong. God hit him over the head. And he knew that Manrisa was here, and he came right to confession. God never gives up. Never. I'm almost convinced that, well, I can think of a few people who probably would be in heaven, but it's not necessarily that people are in heaven. God never gives up. God keeps calling. But the more, just like a child can resist a parent. If a child says to the parent, "Hey, I don't want to have anything to do with you," extremely, extremely painful. But a good parent never gives up and keeps waiting. Come home. I'm here. I love you. the same with God. Temptations are necessary in order that we may learn not to trust in our own strength. And I will put another quote right behind it. As for those whom God has destined for the guidance of others, temptations are essential for them, since there is no better teacher than experience. They are able to feel more compassion for those who are tempted and are more patient with them. They understand the tactics of the devil. They dread neither his deceits nor his open attacks. I will use something maybe I should not use, but I will. So many guys struggle with pornography, masturbation, and so on. Okay? If I never had struggled with that, how can I be compassionate? I know what it feels like. I've had those same struggles. And so it is so important that the person, a confessor, is in touch with their own struggles. And Pope Francis very much, especially a few years ago, spoke about that, the sacrament of confession, the sacrament of healing. Don't be the police and throw the rule book at the guy or the girl. Be compassionate. Be in touch with yourself. And so, as earlier, it's part of humility, knowing that I'm broken, knowing that we're broken. And in that, we can be compassionate with one another. It is so, so important. Self-love is ever occupied with making comparisons. It exalts in superiority. It vexes and annoyed if forced to yield to others. It censors everybody's conduct except its own. It is so, and it's the devil's playground, it is so easy to pick on others and to be preoccupied with the behavior of others and not looking at ourselves, knowing that we're at least minimally as broken as the other person. Lastly, self-love dreads nothing so much as being unnoticed. Selfishness wants to be noticed. Look, see how important I am. Look at me, look at me. See what I just did. See what kind of a car I just was able to buy. See whatever. When someone really grows, the more we grow in a spiritual life, the more we seek anonymity. Really interesting stuff. Actually, what I'm gonna do is, no, I cannot because of the COVID thing. I was gonna invite everyone to say a prayer together and hand out the handout here, and that's too confusing. But I will end with a prayer. Dear Lord, I thank you from the depths of my heart for your infinite kindness in coming to me. With your most holy mother and all the angels, I praise your mercy and generosity towards me, a poor sinner. I thank you for nourishing my soul with your sacred body and precious blood. I will try to show my gratitude to you in the sacrament of your love, by obedience to your holy commandments, by fidelity to my duties, by kindness to my neighbor, and by an earnest endeavor to become more like you in my daily conduct. Amen.